Welcome to another episode of Reflect Inquiry. In this episode, I'm thinking about how discomfort with silence can lead us to fill empty spaces with narratives. For example, let's say you are texting something very important to a friend or anyone you care about. They read the message, but they don't respond. Or maybe you call them and they don't answer. Then a week goes by, maybe two, and you still haven't heard back. At first, the questions start to come up. Did I offend them? Why aren't they responding? Did I say something wrong? I sent something important. Do they not care? Am I not important to them anymore? And without any new information, those questions begin to turn into assumptions. We start filling in the gaps ourselves, assigning meaning, assigning intent, assigning motive. There may have been an emergency. They may have forgotten. The possibilities are endless. But in that space of not knowing, a story begins to form. A story where their lack of response means they don't care. They're being dismissive, they're being hurtful, etc. And now, without them even knowing it, the relationship is carrying new weight. We may be holding resentment, disappointment, hurt, and the other person has no idea that this is happening. When the question starts to surface, instead of answering them ourselves, instead of letting past experiences or assumptions rush in to explain everything, what if we paused and instead of concluding, we asked, we checked in, not to accuse, not to demand, but to create space for clarity and to create space for understanding? There's a piece of advice that people sometimes offer in moments like this. They'll say, well, imagine if you were in their shoes. What if they had an emergency? How would you want someone to respond to you? What if they lost their phone? What if? And while that sounds compassionate, I personally think it can be another slippery slope towards making up new stories. It can still lead us back into story creation because imagining ourselves in someone else's place often leaves room for another narrative. We might think, if it were me, I would have responded. I wouldn't handle it that way. I would never leave someone waiting. And suddenly, even in the name of empathy, we're still measuring someone else's behavior against our own way of being. We're still deciding how we think they should respond, how we think they should be, and that too can quietly miss the point. Maybe the work isn't to imagine ourselves in their place, but to allow them the space to speak from theirs, to let them respond in a way that's true to them, not the version of them we've created in our minds, and not the version we wish they were. Because the goal isn't to shape someone into how we think we would behave. The goal is to stop filling the silence with stories that were never ours to tell. I think when we don't pause, something else happens. The next conversation we have with that person is no longer neutral. It's shaped by all the thoughts we've already had, all the conclusions we've already made. And then when we reconnect, we're no longer meeting the person as they are. We're meeting them through a lens of assumptions, through the lens of stories that we've created about them. And sometimes the silence doesn't resolve. There's no explanation, no emergency, no moment where things are clarified. The silence simply remains. And I think this might be one of the hardest moments to sit with because when there's no answer, no story offered back to us, we're left in a space of unknowing, no resolution, no closure, just the quiet. It's often here that there's that urge to fill the silence. It becomes stronger to rationalize their choice, to explain their absence, to draw conclusions about what it means, not just about them, but about us. what this silence says about our place in their lives, what it says about our importance, what it says about our worth. And maybe part of the work here is resisting that pull towards another type of narrative, not allowing the silence to turn into a story about who we are or who they are or why we are in silence. This is something that I'm learning to practice, and I'm wondering how different it might feel to allow more room for that silent space, allowing it to remain undefined until it isn't. Not silence as rejection, not silence as indifference, but silence as something that we just don't rush to explain. Silence as moments of life unfolding beyond our view. What might change if we notice the moment we start filling the silent spaces? What stories have we already invented and are holding on to that may need to be released? What becomes possible when we let silence exist?